That's last week. He's a captain.
6:30, meeting come to order, please. First order of business, public comment. Anybody wants to make a public comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and you have about 3 minutes. Anybody interested? Okay, we'll move on to the next subject. Item 3, Eric Sautel, Agricultural Commission Chair, 2 members. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. I'm here tonight to present 2 names for nomination to the Ag Commission as alternates. Ken Brisson, who is here tonight, and Kristen Cisneros, both have been quite involved with the Ag Commission. Ken more recently, but Kristen has been running the Best of Harvest contest at the fair for the last 3 years. And so she has indicated, as has Ken, that they would both like to sit as alternates on the board. So I would introduce Ken Brisson, if you'd like to ask him some questions.
Why?
Why? Yeah, that's always the question, isn't it? I'm a large landowner and I'm involved in agriculture a lot. I do maple syrup and honeybees, and we've been experimenting a lot with Abenaki corn for grinding for grains and flours and stuff. So I just felt there was more out in the area that is going on that I didn't know anything about, which come to find out, getting involved with the Leaf Fair, I learned there was a lot more going on than I even realized. So I heard there was an opening. I said, well, the best way to learn is to get involved.
Sounds good. Questions from the board?
No, we've met.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry to hear your grist mill is not up north anymore. I went to visit and it's not
Yeah,
there.
it's a brewery now.
Yeah,
So,
so-
they didn't want to sell me the building, so with all the money I had to put in, I had to do something different. So
What's wrong with that?
it's one of those things that we moved it closer to home. It's a 125-mile-a-day trip I don't have to make.
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
actually 250 if you go both ways. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Kristen?
Not here. Kristen's not here.
Any questions or comments from the board? No? Move to approve 2 3-year alternate memberships of Ken Brisson and Kristen Cisneros to serve on the Agricultural Commission.
Second.
I hear a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Meeting after.
Downstairs, a fair meeting.
This meeting?
Thank you. Next item of business, Scott Emmett, Fire Chief, a special duty rate.
Good evening.
Evening.
Last time I met with the board to see if I could start working special duties, to help out with UNH or down at the racetrack if they have the rodeo events like that. So in the packet, you should have a spreadsheet that looks like that. I've broken everything down. Recently, we did this where I asked the board for an increase for the firefighters for the special duty. So I'm asking for $65 to be paid by the event per hour for myself. And that would cover the admin fee, the retirement, workers' comp, Medicare, Social Security, no, sorry, not Social Security, and then the fee to me.
Questions, comments? Go ahead, Ms. Parker.
Do the vendors get to pick who they have supporting them, or?
Usually not. The base rate for myself would not be time and a half. I kept that lower than that because I didn't want to price myself out either. And I do understand some of these events are looking for the firefighters. And depending on the event, I could be there just as a firefighter EMT. So I wanted to think about that, but other events I do work as the fire chief with more responsibility. So I was kind of trying to pick in the middle ground for that.
Just a comment, and this is also the town administrator. I notice administrative fee is all over the place, 12, 13, 14, 30, 3, 34, and you're only worth $4.95.
Correct. That was the hard part. We do, as you can see on the list from the previous time I came to the board, we do have a mixture of people working these events. So we have call firefighters that get paid for something, have to get paid for Social Security, Medicare, workers' comp, but not retirement. And then depending on the full-time firefighter and when they were hired, that depends on if they're getting paid the retirement fee or not. So that kind of throws a loop into all the other numbers. So all the admin fee goes back into the special duty fund.
Just for a point of information, is this typical with other towns charge?
Yeah, I talked to Durham previously when I was trying to increase for the call firefighters and full-time firefighters and got all their rates. I've also talked to the police chief to see what his rates are, and it's around the same.
How much do we bill out for an event, let's say the racetrack, that's your most commonly used one? How many hours do you usually bill out?
How many hours?
Yes, for like,
Depends on the event, usually like a Friday night, it's like 4 or 5 hours. This weekend for Oktoberfest was probably the largest because the event ran Friday, Saturday, and Sunday was from noon time until 5:30 on Saturday, and I think 6 on Sunday.
and there's 4 people on at the same time?
6.
6 on at the same time. I'm just thinking about how much it costs us to process all this stuff, and we're only getting $4.95 an hour. It's like,
You picked up in my
or even $3.14 an hour. It's not very much. So, and $50 is where all the other departments are in the area.
It's kind of middle ground. If you look at Durham's firefighter rate is, I think, under $60. When you get up into their chief positions, it's almost up to 90.
I'd like us to consider charging $50, $55. Because I think we're getting down into single digits in terms of what we're getting. I don't know if it's not what we do it for money, but it just is another thing we have to deal with. I think we should be getting some kind of, so.
Can I ask the chief a question?
Please.
So right now, do we have any that were hired other than yourself for July of 2011?
One.
No.
And that was that's kind of the issue, is that most of the time it's the call firefighter, so it's that rate versus once in a while it's all the other rates.
It'd be nice to get some uniformity, wouldn't it? An administrative fee, a flat rate or something per person, no matter what, because the processing doesn't change whether you're chief or part-time or full-time firefighter. My suggestion at this point is to move forward with this as it is now, to get things going and have the town administrator check into that to see if we can look at a flat fee system. We can always change this later after negotiation or discussion with, both chiefs at that point, see if we get some kind of.
Is the same, because this is for both fire and police?
Just fire.
So what
He's in his own.
He got his own.
Just for a factual basis,
Excuse me?
just so, what is the administrative fee that you're running?
Well, hours we bill out for every one of the officers and the chief. When I took over, the chief was up here and the patrolmen were down here, so we made it a flat fee of $40 an hour to the officer for everybody, from me on down to no matter who it is. And then, so ours is actually, the fee is the same for everybody, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but what's the administrative fee?
We're billing out at $65 an hour, so I don't know exactly, I can't remember off the top of my head how it breaks down. It's 65, and then if it's a cruiser, it's $10 an hour more for a cruiser.
But the admin charge is 25 then?
Well, everything together is 25. So
Retirement, workers'
retirement, workers' comp, I don't know what the exact breakdown is.
Oh,
But I know it's the same across the board, no matter who they get billed the same.
Maybe we can,
Because I remember it was you who, we came in at $62 and
Yeah.
62.75, you said when we make it flat 65 across the board.
maybe we can get, I think it would be good to be consistent across both services. So maybe we look at what we do now and see if we can have something that's uniform across the board in terms of what that fee is.
So, let's move on this tonight so we can let the chief move forward. And then work with the town administrator and the two chiefs to see if we can work something out that we don't put them out of business. At the same time that, since we are doing town administration, we don't want to burden the town too much without getting some kind of request. Therefore, I move to approve the fire chief special duty rate of pay to begin immediately.
Second?
Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Unanimous, thank you. Next item of business, Deborah Chanda, recommendations for committee membership. Welcome.
So I did put together a list of actually 9 persons, so that we can start at the top. I chose not to include it in the document because
Okay.
these individuals don't know that their names are on the list.
Well, that's quite interesting.
So, I really felt that it was more important to get your perspective, because if you say, no, I'm not interested in that person, then we would have to go back and say, sorry, I know you wanted to be on it, but no, thank you. So I thought it was far better for us to have at least a meeting of the minds in terms of where we're going. And then another thing came up as I actually spoke to one person to solicit information, is that without a charge for the committee, it was hard for them to discern whether or not they would want to be part of the committee. The second was that they wanted to know the composition of the committee, which I think is really very important, whether or not it is going to augment the select board in total, whether or not there is going to be 1 or 2 or all of you participating. So I think those are open questions before we do go to the individuals to say, what do you think? So the first person on my list is Tricia Jenkins, from her interest in the Historical Society, great knowledge of the Lee history and very good contacts. Tricia is the person that I spoke to who basically articulated all of that she really needed to know much more about what the committee would be charged with and the composition of the team. The second person is Zachary Smith, who is currently working in the architecture profession and has shown interest in Lee Town Center before. And the third one is Mary Woodward, who has experience in grant writing and is very well respected. Question to you is, do you want to consider more than 3 persons? I do have 6 more.
Can we have the rest of them?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Tobin Farwell, currently in the engineering profession. Amanda Gorgay, I think is how you say that, and definitely has shown interest in volunteering and potentially would reach out to a different demographic. George Trojan, who is a retired builder. Don Quigley, who has done a lot of town volunteering and intimate with the forestry department from UNH. Ben Jeans, town treasurer, and Cord Bloomquist, who is currently a member of the Advisory Budget Committee and the Heritage Commission, and again, potentially would reach out to a different demographic.
I see this committee, my vision of this is a 10-person committee, and there would be a select board person on there, and the town administrator would be there as well, and then float it out with volunteers in the town. Say that again? 10-person committee. Be a member of some member of this board would be on that committee. Town administrator would be on that committee, and then the rest would be filled out with volunteers from the town. I think 5 would be too small, beyond 10 would be way too much to handle. Opinion.
And just in how, what is the charge? Just briefly, how do you see it? What is the charge of the committee?
The charge is to look for methods and opportunity to talk to the townsfolk, to tell them about a dire need for a new town hall and the continue on expansion to rehabilitate the rest of the facilities within the town itself. And to continue to, try to tighten this thing up a little bit better so for formal presentation.
See, when I thought that this committee, the follow-on committee, was to take the option that was the number one option, which is the town center over waiting for the church property decision, and try and put together, if you would, kind of a sales and marketing plan and take it to the people and say, here's why we made this decision, so on and so forth. I didn't think we were going to go through more iterations of what the town center should look like. I thought we were done with that.
We are in agreement. We are done.
Okay,
I'm exactly where you are. I'd have said it differently, but I'm exactly where you are.
okay. I mean, we've
No, the committee's.
got a plan, right? We've got a building with a plan, and that's what the facilities committee came forth with, and that's what they feel we should be selling to the voters, right?
Exactly right.
So I'm just looking for, that committee to look for opportunities to sell, either
Okay.
through acquire, advertisement.
That's
town
fine.
meetings.
I just don't want to go back into other buildings. So
No,
on and
I
so
don't
forth,
either.
and
The only
open it up.
backup is
That's all.
if it doesn't happen with the church properties, is
Absolutely.
Stevens Field.
Okay.
Okay. But there's also another piece on that. I'm not sure we'll be ready to have hardcore figures for the town meeting in March. It'll be more of, this is where we are at this time, this is what we're hoping to put forward. It's almost like a referendum. Or can we have some engineering funds to move forward, to start working on it from an engineering point of view? Mr. Butler?
I'm with you, except for one thing you said. Look for opportunities. I want this group to create opportunities.
Yes.
And I'm not sure about 10 people, but whatever. But yeah, this person or persons, excuse me, needs to go out and disseminate information and educate the people in terms of not twisting their mind one way or the other, but this is what's out there, this is the issue, this is what we've come up with a solution, and get the information out there. Because I think the biggest thing we have to fight against is people who are not tuned into these events, coming to vote, and they have no clue what this is. And I think we need to
I'm
work
agreeing.
on that, so.
I think we're all saying the same thing. Yeah, we're not gonna go back and resurrect anything. It's been a lot of work done to date. We're just gonna move forward.
One of the things we have to be clear about in terms of what Deborah said in terms of the charge, what exactly are they charged with?
Well, we
Because-
need to, that's right, you're absolutely right.
Because the plan is what they're came up with, but also you talked about getting money for engineering consulting. Those are two different things. So we need to be clear to this committee what they're actually promoting. Is it the whole plan? Is it both of them? Or is it just the money for construction drawings or whatever? So I think we need to be clear.
I think it's the whole package, but we need to, when we get to town meeting, I don't think we'll have all the engineering, all the numbers, and everything
No.
else for a full load of all the
Yeah.
town hall and the library and everything else. But we need to have some money up front to see if they're gonna bite on it, put it plainly.
And I think
It's
you're-
more than referendum when you ask for engineering money.
And I think, I don't know if you did this yourself, but you've got an eclectic bunch of people here in terms of some different parts of the town.
Various persons.
Because I think that's gonna be important, because if we keep reaching the same people all the time, you're not getting those people that, maybe don't have anything to do with certain town activities and events. And I think you've got a good cross-section of people here.
Is eclectic positive or negative?
Eclectic is good.
Positive.
Different.
Okay.
I think you need to touch base on all the different parts of town because,
I think it's very important to distinguish, though, whether or not it is the full warrant article to move forward versus a warrant article for some funds appropriated for further studies, because I think there's a perception that that's been, perception and truth potentially, but it definitely is a perception that a lot of funds have already been dispersed without anything to necessarily show from a true architectural design and engineering design. So I think in the charge, I would really like to see where the select board wants to take this for the deliberative session and the vote, because I think the persons will want to know that before they sign up for it.
yeah, I heard the same thing, we spent enough money, let's find out if they want it or not.
Exactly.
But ultimately, you're gonna have to have those particular documents done anyways, no matter what you do, so, I don't know.
We're gonna need to set up a budget. I mean, you know, there's a lot of vehicles and so on that they can use to go out there and try and sell this thing, whether it's printed material or et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, there needs to be a fund set up to support that.
Yeah, mailings are $700-800, something like that to everybody.
That would have been.
And we've had limited success with that, so.
I'm gonna ask the town administrator, since she worked in this area before as project management, what's the likelihood of getting hardcore numbers for a meeting in March?
It would have to be before that.
It would have to be before that, we'd have to know by the third week of January, because that's when you have to finalize the budget and you have to finalize the warrant. And if you're gonna be looking for the 3.4 or 5, whatever the number is, then along with that, you have to put together all those bond figures.
Is there any chance of, I'm sorry, is there any chance of getting a number out of the church sooner than a December timeframe?
Well, like I've told you before, their assessment should be in by now, based on their original thing. So they're in negotiations in terms of, not negotiations, but talking about, you know, do they like that appraisal? Do they not like that appraisal? So they're doing that at the moment, at least according to their original timetable. So we can ask.
Well, I just think it'd be nice if we could get a number from them sooner rather than later, that's all.
But they have to go through their process as well.
I understand.
So, and I think the shortest time frame would be the appraisal comes back and comes back less than what we offered. I think they're gonna go like that, like, let's move over to the membership and see if they're in favor of this particular thing. If the appraisal comes out way more than what we offered, then they're gonna come back to us and negotiate a different price. So those are scenarios I would think, but that's their process. But
I kind of envision this, how, in my mind, how it wraps out is, I don't think the town's gonna suck down any $3.4 million bond. It's just my feeling after I see what happened with the library and the cost associated with the Ice River School District. I think they're going up by some percentage points. I mean, it'll be a real issue, hard sell. But I want to lay out the whole plan of what town halls first and this, how it was laid out from committee, that all the buildings get taken care of sooner or later in an overall plan. But the first part is to try to sell the town hall to be built first, and then the other ones would follow out. So that's how I'm trying to get that to the townsfolk, that we're not asking for 3.4, but we're asking for this much to do the town hall, and then we're going to continue to follow through piece by piece by piece.
that's not what the committee recommended.
Well, I don't see,
The committee recommended the whole
I don't see
thing.
$3.4 million coming down.
Well, that's what they have to try and sell. I mean, I'm not arguing with them. I'm
Okay.
saying that's basically.
looking at reality.
That's the one-line charge, is to, here's the project, here's the cost, and here's why you should vote yes.
I'd like to parse it. Oh, I understand, but no,
I'm just
no,
saying,
no, I got you, but I'm saying I don't want to lose everything either. I guess I got to take the risk.
You don't have the numbers to do just one phase of it
Yeah, I
in the
know.
committee. So then you're not asking this committee just to market the plan, because now you're taking the plan and chop it up into pieces. It doesn't go, you know, if you only do this part, it's only a certain percentage. We have to go back because you're starting site work, stopping site work, and it's gonna be more money, so.
I guess maybe I can work it as a cell game, go for the whole thing, and if it doesn't work out, can we get a piece of the action somehow? I don't know.
Well, it does increase, to Scott's point, I mean, we were looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 200,000 on the phasing. And it is constant disruption, dirt, you know, the parking lot, et cetera, is jeopardized significantly.
You have a comment, please?
Yeah, Katrinka Plakio, Lisbon Road, I'm a library trustee. I'm also a member of the foundation, which is charged with fundraising. So what I'm hearing you sort of intimate is that there might be a possibility where you just do town hall by itself, and hopefully down the pike, when I'm 9 years old, that you would then do the library,
Well, I don't want to say that, but
or 80, you know, it's coming up.
the point's well made. I guess I don't mind trying to sell the whole package, but I'd love to have a backup.
So how would you do a backup?
I don't know. I would need professional help to do that.
You know, obviously, since, you know, I'm part of the backup plan of the library, which at one time was the front plan, I really, to me, I think you really have to try to do the whole package, because it's gotta happen one way or the other. And we've had conversations, Carrie Brown, you know, mentioned that there were people who were happy with to do the library but could care less about the town hall. You're gonna have vice versa. You have people who wanna push the town hall and care less. If you can get them all voting together, I mean, I say this is a really opportunity to unite the town. You know, there's so much divisiveness going on these days in politics and everything. I just think if you split town hall against library, against historical, against the hobo shit, I mean, you know, or whatever, you're gonna like have your factions. And I really see that as being a mistake. And, you know, personally, it's town hall, you know, everything's online, but people say that about the library too. So I just think you're going to, you know, if you want to get the town working together, you really got to go for the whole enchilada, which is one of my favorite phrases. I lived in Texas for a while.
Point well made. Thank you.
And,
So I guess what did you say, Mr. Brown? Say it again.
We take the plan as presented by the facilities committee, and we try and put that to the potential voters of the town and sell it to them. Why should you do this? Why do we need it? What do you get for your money? What's the return? And I think that's, you know.
And in charge of the committee?
That's what you have to do. I'm sorry?
And in charge of the committee?
We have to write something up. In charge of the committee is to do that. Take it to the people. You gotta take it to the people. And you gotta tell them why it's the best deal going. And hope that they vote yes. That's what's left.
Scott?
I concur with Mr. Brown. I think one of the things we need to do for this particular committee, also the deliberative session, is to hear what people have to say against that whole plan. So I suggest that we put it on the warrant article and educate people and then see how it goes. But also during that particular time, find out what people don't like about
The
it.
committee has to listen
Yeah.
to the people. The committee needs to, you know, you can't just listen, you can't just hear what you want to hear. You're gonna have to listen and figure out how you address the problem and put it back.
And I think if it doesn't pass in March, come back with whatever those revisions are to see if you can get more support. I don't necessarily want to be like Ryan, go for 7 years and try to get a new facility, but I think if you kind of start to wheedle it down in terms of what people are looking for, what can people support? Because right at the moment, we don't know how many people would support the whole thing. Might be 50, might be 100, might be 600. We don't know. And I think this will at least give us that piece of information. I'd be really irritated if we get 59.9%, but, you know, that's life. But I think it's important to hear what people have to say for, but also especially against. So,
All right, then let's move forward at that point. Deborah?
Could I ask then when the charge would be drafted so that I could share that with the individuals that we'd be recruiting?
Soon.
This week.
It's going to be a
This
very,
week.
it's going to be a very simple,
It'll be drafted this
it'll
week.
be drafted this
It'll be
week.
drafted this week, and
Well,
What?
who's drafting it? I would hope that the board would sign off on it.
Of course.
It's your project, which means it won't be ready for another 2 weeks unless you do it tonight.
or a special meeting we can.
Well, let's start writing it, we'll figure out how we get it done. I mean, I understand what you're saying, so we have to figure out how we get it done.
we could just have a special meeting just to prove that.
Huh?
We could have a special meeting just to prove that.
So be it.
And how, remind me again, when working on a document, we can't, how can we work that?
You might be able to circulate drafts,
That's it. Can't approve them.
right?
Can't, I don't understand that, but, so can we,
I'd have to, honestly, I would want to reread the statute before I
Says
say
it.
whether you can ultimately do that, because you don't even have a starting point. In
Right.
other words, you don't have a document tonight, you've essentially completed, and you're just fine tuning. It would be creating the entire document via email, which I don't think you can do. But I have another question.
Please, you.
So it sounds as if the intent is to go forward in March with the whole $3.4 million project. Yes?
well, unless they do something to it to deliberative session,
Well, it's a bond,
they can't tweak a bond.
You can't
I
tweak
don't
a
think
bond.
that they can do
I
a
thought they
whole
could tweak
lot.
anything at deliberative session regarding money.
But let's just suppose that that's what's going forward, and that's based on the site plans,
Well, the tweaked one that we'll hear about in a little bit.
and that's it.
I did not hear that.
Us?
Well,
I mean, I
guess
don't
what
know
I'm-
how you're gonna market the plan with a plot plan
Right.
that is a flat with no further elevations showing people what really can be.
And I agree, that's what I'm curious, I mean, is there, you know, at what point do we bring another, if we do, bring another design professional in? Because I'm not sure how you're gonna get, and I don't know, from the work of the facilities committee, say the square footage of town hall, how was that arrived at? In other words, I don't even know that. So I don't know what, do you know what I'm saying? I don't know what kind of building it is.
It looks like the building at Pocket Key on 125, that's the thought. That's what the committee used as kind of an example. I don't
Which
think
building
they,
is on 125?
Pocket Key, next to S&J.
With some aesthetic
Yes.
embellishment.
I guess I'm less concerned, quite frankly, with what it looks, I'm less concerned with what it looks like than how does it function. And just,
Well-
is that gonna be worked out with this new committee?
That's what you do with the design plans and stuff.
Right.
And we're saying we're not doing that,
Right,
so.
that's why I'm trying to understand. So let's suppose you're at the deliberative session, and you're trying to sell a $3.4 million plan, and somebody says, what does the building look like? Well, we don't really know. How many offices are there? We don't really know. If I was going to be asked to spend $3.5 million, I think I would want answers to those questions.
Well, we have the design that we did for the town hall part,
We do have a sketch.
yes.
My understanding is that people spoke, that, you know, we met with the library, I can speak for myself because I wasn't at the other meetings. We met with Arcodano initially, And then we were asked to reduce our square footage. The library, we worked very hard and we did reduce it. My understanding is that the town hall people met with Arcadano, and then you were asked to reduce your square footage, and Randy came up with a plan that he showed to you, and you all said, whippee. You know, I'm sorry to get, you know, but is this news? I mean, is
Yes,
this is news to you that
We
this?
met with Arcadano, and
Right.
he came up with a certain number of square footage.
Right.
I don't even recall what that number was at this point, 5,000 something? 5,000 something.
5953.
Thank you. As sort of as that was going on, yes, Mr. Stevens came up with a different plan in a different size building that I
Smaller.
believe was 5,000 square feet. And town staff went and talked about it and said, yep, we understand how this could work. And then the facilities committee reduced the size of the building.
Working with you all.
No, so that's what I'm saying, we don't even know, if we were asked a question, we wouldn't be able to answer the question. So I'm just trying to understand how this timeline is going to work, because again, that's what I'm working off of right now, is trying to move backwards off of when these things need to be known. How is that going to be developed?
So basically, you know, the facilities committee working to reduce it had no input from you on the reducing, and
So just to be
basically
clear-
wasted a lot of time.
Just to be clear, it was reduced by 250 square feet.
Oh, okay. But anyway, there was conversation going back and forth. We understood that Randy had shown it to you, you know, I mean, and that you all.
Well, but the plan that Mr. Stevens put together, in my understanding, is not necessarily the plan that the facilities committee discussed and decided on.
That's actually not accurate.
I don't know.
Oh, it was exactly his plan. And then when we were trying to take down numbers slightly more,
Yeah.
it was reduced by 250 square feet.
Okay.
250 square feet isn't gonna make or break this proposal
Okay.
whatsoever. But I mean, that's all that was changed. That is all that is changed. So the understanding of the facilities committee was that you had agreed to the 5,000 square feet. That is our understanding.
We did. We agreed to the 5,000 square feet.
But that brings up in terms of a point, what is your typical voter gonna need to see
Right.
to prove that?
They're gonna need to see, it would be nice to have never mind a plan like this, but they're gonna wanna see a layout, sometimes a three-dimensional layout. Cardboard structures, you know, with a layout and color and everything else. They need to understand that it'll take care of all the town's needs if they're gonna spend that kind of money, whether it be the library or town administration or Heritage Commission or anything else at this point.
But that's the next step. So if they need the next step, then there's not enough time, I don't think, to do that before deliberative session.
That's what I was
Because if you
getting at
need
before.
layouts and schematics and elevations and stuff, because we don't even know what kind of building those particular things are. We talked about a building like the Crawford Keep for the town hall, but what about the library?
That's why I originally talked about a referendum, which is not a point people are interested in talking about. Referendums are not really binding, but it gets a sense of the people. I mean, I need to know before we spend a lot of money and retread all the way backwards again. What does the voters think? Where do they want to go? What do they want to do?
What does a referendum entail?
Basically ask the questions. We have a 3.4 million, we think it's going to cost $3.4 million to go ahead and do this complete outlay. And we're asking your opinion, would this be something you'd be willing to spend your money on? Without having all this other engineering and putting tons of money into this thing. And if it feels like we got, 70% of the pop, or whatever the vote comes out to be, that shows we got strength. It's interesting that we should move forward, get engineering plans, and at least get all the engineering documentation up so we can have a real bond. So that's where I was sitting before.
So
I'm getting
it's not
concerned.
binding?
It's not binding.
It's just a check, yes or no?
It's a check. So
Okay.
we still need a
Okay.
committee to go out and, as Mr. Brown says, sell this thing, promote it as much as
Mhm.
possible. Why do we want to do not just town hall, but we want to do the library, we want to put the public, planning board, all the different boards and committees involved in this thing. We want to get it right, because if we're going to spend that kind of money, it better be right for at least 50 years at this point.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm trying to get to the point where, not that I don't want to do any of this, so don't get me wrong, I want to get these changes made, but I want to make sure that we can understand what the public wants, and I think Mr. Buckby's saying the same thing, he's trying to get a sense of it, and I'm not sure, between now and the deliberative session, we probably could have a very healthy discussion, trying to promote it as much as possible. And that will give us time, if it's a referendum vote that's positive, then we have opportunity and time to move forward to see if we can find funding and grants, but also work on the engineering, or maybe ask them for a referendum and follow through with some engineering cost or something. That shows commitment.
Isn't the vote on the land almost a referendum question? Because,
Because we've got Stephen Spiel as a backup.
but I thought that the purchase of the land was to promote this plan. So if they don't purchase the land, one might assume that they're not in favor of this plan, and you can't do this plan without the land.
In politics, you can't assume.
No, but
You
I
can't assume
don't,
anything.
it would be curious if they said yes to this plan on a referendum and no to the purchase of the land.
What if someone's thinking, I want a buffer between the town and the church? I don't want to build anything new. I'm going to vote for buying the land. You could have voters that feel that way.
Or the opposite, and if they don't have any idea why you're trying to buy the land, so you're gonna vote no, we don't need land. If they don't tie it back to the proposal, it could easily be a no. I mean, I think that's what happened with the property on the other side.
Probably, in terms of what you were talking about, John, in terms of having this particular group promote this particular thing, and then seeing in terms of referendum, if you made that in terms of a referendum, the same thing we did with this building. This is our plan, this is our ideas. To get you drawings, it's gonna cost X amount, and have that be your litmus test in terms of if they're for it or not.
I agree. Oh, that's what we were before, engineering drawings, yes, Paul.
Right, because, sorry, just one, because otherwise,
That's
you're
the money.
waiting another year before
That's
you're
correct.
asking for the money to do the drawings, so.
If they're gonna pay for the drawings, that show there's some kind of
Right.
commitment, please.
Yeah, Paul Gazowski, 46 Lamprey Lane. Trying to sort through the sequence of what it might look like on the warrant. So the church property probably would be there as a separate warrant article. So you have this referendum. Maybe you create a warrant article, and I don't know if this will fit, to allocate money into the Building Capital Reserve Fund with specific purpose for developing engineering drawings if the referendum passes. Or if I don't know, can you access that fund for drawings?
We have in the
Yes.
past.
Okay, well then, you put some more money in that fund in anticipation that something's going to happen here. That would help you avoid losing a whole year or calling a special meeting.
And I agree.
Yeah, it would be a problem. So maybe you get a non-binding referendum, you have the church property, and you bump up the capital reserve.
You don't need the referendum if you're gonna ask for monies for engineering plans.
Yeah, it might be easier to bump up the capital reserve fund than to ask specifically for engineering money. And in the meantime, we have square footage allocations. That's information that's valuable. People can begin to, within their respective domains, if you will, work on how to move those chess pieces around. That may be with John's talent or a guy like Zach Smith. You can develop some drawings. I don't see elevations as awfully tricky. They can be fairly non-committal at this point in time. They kind of deal with aesthetics and appearances. I think you were hinting at that with the town hall earlier discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
One last.
one last time. Please, you got the podium.
Yeah, I would recommend doing a separate warrant article for the purchase of the church property. But I was going to say, in some ways, and, maybe I'm wrong about this, but in some ways, a bond vote is sort of a referendum, because there's nothing in a bond vote that says that money gets spent. It's giving the Board of Selectmen permission to go and get it, so it would probably be 6 months to a year before you would even go for a bond vote. It's just, and you have 3, as I recall from our research when we were doing the library, you still have plenty of time to do a bond, to go for a bond. I think I had a 3-year period, but this is, I'm going back in my memory banks. But, and so anyway, I would just argue that possibly going for a bond vote would be a referendum, because if to put money in a capital reserve fund, there are people in town who think we've spent enough money on planning. We're pushing a couple $100,000 over the past 10 years, I think. I didn't double check that math before I came here. But do we really want to spend more on that? And if we put more money in the capital reserve fund, that could be adding to that expense.
I do have one last question, and that is your thoughts on the persons that I mentioned, other than eclectic.
Yeah, well, you're talking about a 10-person committee, what's your opinion?
I mean, there's no guarantee these persons are going to say yes.
Yes.
The last person on your list is out of the state, probably until sometime in November at the earliest.
I did hear that.
Oh, yeah, so he might not be the best person.
Well, if the charge is 2 weeks away, what are we, the 9th, the 24th? It sounds like you'd be a week or 2 absent.
What do you think about the number 10?
I think it's a large committee.
Mhm.
I think I don't think we would get 10. Well, it would really be 8 persons. I don't think we
It
would
would be
get
8, yeah.
I'm not sure we would get there. We had the goal of 9 on the facilities committee, and we never made it.
Comments, questions, Bill, board members?
I think you should probably ask him and see how many you can get, and just go from there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's, you have a list of 10, the question is how many are gonna show up, so, I mean, start with 10, you're gonna be lucky if you end up with 7 or 6.
Well, the whole committee's 10.
Yeah.
2 are town people.
So there's no objections to any person that was mentioned?
I don't have any objectives. They all bring some quality to the committee.
Yeah.
They all have some domain specialty.
Okay.
And we're gonna
then-
work on that charge, and we'll get to you through the town administration.
Okay, so I would like to be able to deliver that when I do contact them.
Yes.
So, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask,
Yeah, please.
would you entertain, and I'm not sure if there's anybody in the audience that's going to do this, can we entertain what the people in the audience think about this particular thing going forward? In
Sure.
terms of, is there anything we're missing? Do you need to see something more, just in terms of thoughts? I don't know, nobody's brave enough, never mind.
Well, we have a volunteer. Who left to the podium? In fact, there's somebody on the list here.
John Tappan, 187 Stepping Stones Road, and so at the moment I'm speaking as just myself. And I have to agree with Julie that when she says we don't know what's in the building, I don't know that there is a spreadsheet or a table of sizes, numbers of pump rooms, sizes of those rooms, functions of those rooms, those shared offices, who uses them, what the fraction of use would be from each of those parties. When the architect put his plan together, you could see that. He put square footage figures to each of those needs for town hall. When Randy Stevens presented his plan, I then presented a spreadsheet to the facilities committee which showed the architect's plan in each of the room area functions and how that maps into Randy Stevens. That's now been reduced, changed, but I haven't seen the numbers. So when Julie says she's not sure what's in that building of 4,750 square feet, she has just reason for saying that. And I hear the talk about needing elevation drawings and what is this going to look like. And yes, I think eventually that's important. But I think if you can't point to the numbers in the table that show how big each of these spaces are and how you've met all of the needs of the town with this building of this size, then you really are missing something. So that would be what I think.
Thank you. Okay, we appreciate it. We're gonna move on to the next item. John Chapman, CAD drawings. Thank you.
I think, Paul, you have the draft drawing, and I see there's some extras up here. Are those for somebody else? Or somebody wants them? First, for those who are not here at the last meeting, what did I volunteer to do at the last meeting? I volunteered for a drafting task, not a design task. The board wanted a site plan drawing for the e-crier of the recommended medium cost option 2D, but only the high cost version had been drawn. So my task was to draw the concept site plan for the medium cost 2D option, which would include the full parcel augmented by the land to be purchased, the church land. The most recent plan that the architect had produced for the existing town building, freight depot, and the tool shed. And the existing library with an addition that would give a total area of 6,500 square feet. That's smaller than the high cost plan. A new town hall of 4,750 square feet. And the most recent parking lot design, which did not have the eaves. In making the drawing, I made some small changes, mostly additions to the previous drawings. So on the meeting room historical society, the changes that I made from what had been on the architect's drawing, I added the existing sidewalk and mailbox near the street that's never been shown. I shifted the building connector, that's the little dark blue square, 64 square feet that connects two buildings. I shifted that to the west or to the left so that it is closer to including the existing doorways that are in those two buildings. I did not measure those doorways, so it might even need to go a little further. And I corrected the shed area, which had been listed as 1,056 square feet. My wife and I went and measured it, and it's 984 square feet. The sidewalks, they were scaled from the architect's drawing, and they're drawn at 5 feet wide. And the wider terminations at the buildings have dimensions of either 10, 15, or 20 feet. That's what's scaled from the architect's drawing. Except for the walkway from the meeting room to the parking lot, which I drew at 12 feet, the architect's drawing scales at about 13 and a half feet wide. We measured the Liberty Tree red oak, which is to the east of the library, and we added it to the drawing. That had never been shown on any previous drawings. I didn't move the library main entrance sidewalk, so I drew it in the place where the architect previously had it, but it's obviously too close to the Liberty Tree. I did talk to the library director, who thought that the sidewalk and entrance could be shifted to the east, that is to the right, and obviously if you want to keep the tree, you can't put a sidewalk against the trunk of the tree. And I also, at the bottom of the drawing, I added Wednesday Hill Road to the drawing, but I see that I have omitted a label there. That road that intersects with Route 155 coming up from the bottom right, that is Wednesday Hill Road, and that hasn't been shown on previous drawings, and it's important for understanding the scale. So the draftsman draws what the architect has designed, but he should also record his observations and feed that information back to the architect. So these notes at the top of the drawing, those are my observations. And the question, of course, is what notes should be on the presentation drawing. And this last sentence, I'm going to jump out and give you now my personal observation, and that is that the more the drawing is studied, the more questions come up. One of the big differences between the architect's drawings, which are done freehand, is that they convey the nature of, we're sitting at the table in the cafe and the architect says, let me show you what I have in mind. And in looking at that type of drawing, you tend to automatically overlook a multitude of sins, because he starts drawing a sidewalk that has to go from here to there. And yeah, once he gets to the parking lot, as this sidewalk from the meeting room does, it ends at what are active parking spaces. Well, can't do that. I mean, how do you get here between the cars to get onto the 12-foot wide sidewalk? But because when the architect is doing it freehand, you overlook that, because of course when it comes to drawing, you wouldn't do that. So in doing this drawing, there are many questions that come up. There are also many easy tools for answering questions that haven't been answered before. Here are the sidewalks. Once you've drawn it, you select tools, measure area, click, tells you what the area is. You can do the same thing with areas of grass. How's that going to get there? How many square feet of sod or hydro seed or whatever you need? This is labeled a draft. It has all of my notes at the top, which I thought should not be lost, should be, at least for now, kept with it. And so now I'm open to questions or discussions or instructions on if you want some change to this for your use.
First of all, what do you think of John for doing this? And with all your observations, extremely important. And as you talked about the walkways and stuff, you made valid points. They end up in parking lot areas. And the other issue that just jumps out to me is like somebody like Randy is going to have to snow blow all those things or shovel them, right? There's a lot of sidewalks. It looks pretty, but a lot of sidewalks.
I talked to Randy,
Yeah.
and of course Randy says he's going to clear all that. I also asked Randy about the parking lot, and this design doesn't have those ears. They're shown with what would be a yellow paint crosshatch saying this is not a parking space. But I asked Randy about this parking lot design, and he said, well, it's not all that easy to plow, even without the ears. So I asked him about some other designs. As far as I know, that hasn't been done, is sit down with Randy and say, in order to get this X number of spaces in, here's some different layouts, and how does this work? Randy said, maybe we need a snow pusher, depending on the design. Maybe eventually we need to talk about clearing snow, meaning putting it in a dump truck and carrying it off-site.
Quite well made.
And as far as the sidewalks, the sidewalks, not all the sidewalks should be shown here. The town hall, the Randy Stevens design for town hall had 5 exits. The 4,700 square foot design for town hall, which one of the committee members came up with, had 4 exits. Emergency exits have to be maintained. So you got to clear snow away from all emergency exits in the winter, so you need to have probably sidewalks around this building. Right now, I put in the sidewalk at the front of the old town hall, and you can see with this design, that sidewalk doesn't connect to anything. But that town hall as a meeting area, if you set chairs up like you have here, auditorium setting, websites that I looked at said you can have as many as 130 people seated in that meeting room. Well, you have to have exits, like the fire chief will tell you, you've got to have exits that are suitable for that capacity, that seating capacity. And sidewalks to match, to get people away from the building in an emergency. That's one of the things that comes up when you draw it like this, is that every line on there, you have to say, where does it go? And
Questions and comments? Please. Mr. Brown?
Well, the first comment is just as you did, thank John and his wife for doing this. I understand, but you're always a contributor with them, for sure. Anyway, thank you very much. You're right, it generates a lot of questions. One of my biggest questions are we ready to take this to the public yet? It just looks like there's just a whole lot more that needs to be done to me before we have a product to go out there and sell, other than just say it's X amount of dollars and X amount of square feet. There's a lot more to do.
Mr. Wood?
John, what's the little rectangles in front of the entrances on those buildings? Is that like a bicycle rack or something, or what is that?
oh, those little those are on the architect's drawing, and I believe that all of those are benches.
Oh, benches.
So I drew those as 6 feet long, 18 inches wide, and the paved space to the outside of them is also 18 inches, so that someone could sit either facing in toward the doorway or facing out.
And the other thing that pops up, which I'm just gonna put it on the table, leach fields, they're gonna take care of town hall, right? Where's the leach field for the library?
It's all
There isn't one.
This is supposed to be the one for all the
Oh,
buildings.
you mean now or
Well,
on this plan?
I'm asking if this is gonna take care of everybody.
This leach field is shown just where the architect had placed it, and it is the size that he spec'd when he worked up the cost of the high plan. And what I don't know is if you have to add bathrooms over in the meeting room, the town hall, and on a level site, what are the implications of having a leach field that far away?
Well, I know in town hall, we don't have any septic field.
Right.
So the question is, as you move forward, if this thing goes the direction we hope it would, is that all this stuff gets cleaned up that was never cleaned up to begin with. Or we have to have it get pumped out all the time because it's just a whole big tank.
The architect, in his calculating costs, had specified the size of the leach field, and that's what he drew here. I believe it's 40 feet by 50 feet. And that was based on his large town hall, large library addition, and I think actually at the time there was a larger addition to the meeting room historical society area. And so on the number of people that would be in those and whatever size is needed.
It's my understanding it's like serve all those buildings.
That's good to know.
And so if the town hall wasn't there, it would be smaller, he had a smaller size.
Yeah. Anything else from John?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gives us something to talk about.
So my last question there had been, do you want anything different or added or changed? The only thing that I had is, I did show this drawing to one person, they did not recognize Wednesday Hill Road, so I should put that
Probably should put that
name
on
on it. Anything else? Nothing else?
Not at this time, but we'll get, but thank you very much. Really puts it in perspective. Item number 7, Julie Glover, Town Administrator.
So just want to keep asking the question at this time, is there anything that the select board wants us to put in the e-crier relative to this proposed project?
Not right at the moment.
Not right this time, until we get the charge formed, and once we've got the committee formed, then we'll make those announcements with it or something.
Okay. Next item, you may recall a couple weeks ago, we had first talked about the MapGeo proposal. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to either go on MapGeo's website or Dover. The frequency with which it gets updated is really quite dependent on us. In other words, we send them an update of our assessing data once a month, and they'll update the MapGeo site once a month. If we all decide there really isn't that much that changes month to month, and we want to do it quarterly, then they would update it quarterly. But other than the $1,000 a year, there really aren't any other costs to us, other than, again, some staff time and just getting them the data from the assessing program. We also have to make sure that our maps are kept up to date, but we are required to do that by state statute anyway, so updating the tax maps every year, which it's probably somewhere, it's at a cost of under $2,000 a year, but it's something that we are supposed to be doing anyway, so.
I think it's money well spent at this point.
Can I ask a question? Who uses this? I went on the Dover site and it was cool, but would I ever use it? I don't, the typical, who is it that we're doing this for?
Well, first, you would say that you're doing it for the residents. I mean, the number one inquiry that we get at town hall is assessing related. It's all assessing related. And so because this also layers planning and zoning data, it also handles some of the inquiries that I'm sure Karen Rossi gets. She couldn't be here tonight, she's at another meeting. But those are the inquiries we get all day long, so it just provides even more information for taxpayers when they're looking for information about their properties.
So I call up, I ask you a particular question, are you gonna drive them to this thing, or are you gonna answer their questions? How is that gonna?
It's both.
Because it's one of the things, most people, we have off the site, the thing that you can go to Avatar and look at your assessing stuff. And I tell people about that, oh, we have that. They don't, most people don't know. So maybe that this can be somehow promoted.
Oh, yeah.
Through.
Yeah. No, when people
So-
call up, we answer their questions, but then we also tell them, this information is available on the website. It's not the same, though. I don't know if you've ever tried to print your tax card off of the Avatar website. It doesn't.
Look, but I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't give you the same amount of data. So hopefully this is going to provide everybody with even more information.
It's more about public.
Well, you'll let them know that it's out there and how to use it and stuff like that. I went to the Dover site, and it was a little bit clunky to start with. I was having a level of frustration, and I'm a computer person, so it's not like for the faint of heart. You have to go in there, and you have to know some things before you can actually use it well, so.
Well, once we pass it and it's employed, we can put it in e-crier, and then we have such a software base, and there'll be a paragraph maybe how to use it or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can give them a blue sheet.
Does Durham have this? I didn't understand.
Durham, I think, is working with Stratford Regional on getting it at the same time we are.
Therefore, I move to grant the town administrator permission to enter into an agreement with SRPC for MapGeo online communication. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. The MS1, if you understood what I was looking for. So as in past years, the Department of Revenue Administration does not yet have all of the utility values ready, and we are still waiting for our water utility information, which is very small dollars in relative to all the other values that we have to report. So Scott Marsh, our assessor, suggested that the board might want to sign this cover sheet for the MS1, and then as soon as he receives the Penachuk information, he can put this in, and then we can send it to DRA. Again, this is the other big piece of what we need in order to set a tax rate. Doing it this way is just trying to keep the process moving along. So for example, DRA could release the data tomorrow, and then I probably don't want to have to wait at this point, we're already into October, to get the data into DRA, to get the tax rate set.
I don't see that as an issue at this point.
Can you just send it to us before you send it up, so we can
Yep.
take a look at it?
Yeah,
Therefore, I move to approve the MS1 as presented with the knowledge that the final version will have the updated water utility data input once received from DRA.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Whatever.
There was a typographical misspelling.
Oh, is that right?
I don't know.
I'm not going
Mention his
there.
name.
I'm not going there.
At the last meeting, the board pulled an item out of the consent agenda, which was the business card resolution, had some questions about it. And out of that discussion, you asked me to prepare a draft credit card policy, which you got in the agenda packet, and which I reviewed with all of the department heads. So,
I reviewed it, I didn't see anything that was controversy, that's for sure. It's all the department heads. All these credit cards that do exist out there,
we do,
there's no recommended changes in amounts at all? Please come forward.
The only one that concerns me is the Exxon, which is our gas card, the WEX. Because obviously we know the gas fluctuates.
Mm-hmm.
We use more in the wintertime, the cruisers idle more when it's colder, snowstorms, things like that. You know, I can look back through, you know, if the board wants to set a limit for that, I can look back through and see, you know, what we typically used in the past and then adjust it or set it according to that. But that's the only one that I have a concern about.
and right now, we don't have a credit limit.
Right.
Yeah, either on the fire, highway, or police, they're all open at this point. Actually, I'm not too worried about a credit limit on that point, I'm sure. People will get cashless, they need it.
Is it actually a credit card?
It is.
It's a credit
Yeah,
card?
it's a card we swipe at the pump.
Okay, so if it was stolen or something, your liability should be zero?
Well, you need a driver ID
Mhm.
in the mileage to enter
Okay.
for the car.
But you can't use it in any other place, just at those? I'm not too concerned about those. I'm concerned about the second section, those particular ones. If people have these credit cards to go buy things, why do you need these particular accounts? And I noticed one of the people on the list is Bill and Kristen, when they go to buy stuff.
Are you looking at the Home Depot and the Lowe's?
Yeah, Lowe's and Staples.
So the Home Depot and the Lowe's, there's only one credit card,
Yeah,
primarily used by the maintenance staff.
okay. Well, I'm okay with the Lowe's,
Mhm.
and the Home Depot is a little bit high. The Staples for $10,000 3 times, I don't know why you need to have
I
bills
don't
that
know.
high.
That's just something they laid on us. We didn't ask for it. It just sits there.
And the thing is, if you're buying stuff from Staples, you can use the credit card that's assigned to your department, I would think.
That's actually, we don't even have a card for that,
The Staples one?
right? Most of that is purchased online. It's a credit account more than a credit card.
So it's not a credit card.
It's a card that exists, but we have it someplace.
It's on account.
Nobody uses it.
why don't we get rid of those and just use the credit cards that we have assigned for those particular people and departments? Is
I
there an
would want to
instance
double
where-
check whether we have to have the credit account in order to get the discounts that we get.
Okay.
That would be my only question relative to Staples. Okay, Ms. Rossi uses the Staples card.
All right, I would urge us to, I don't think we need $10,000 limits on those particular three accounts. I would think if you reduced it to like 500 or 1,000 or something like that, that would be more than sufficient. I'm thinking about it in terms of if somebody gets in there and uses it and uses it and uses it,
Mhm.
and I'm not thinking about legitimate use, I'm thinking about fraudulent use. I don't know if we're covered, if it's not a credit card per se, it's just an account. More information from the back.
Typically, on the fraudulent use of a credit card, if somebody uses your card fraudulently, the company, the bank, will reimburse those funds. You're not liable for them as the victim.
Well, I guess I'm unclear in terms of these accounts or credit cards. We're saying, I'm hearing one thing that there's no card, but then
Right, but if you do have a card and it's used fraudulently,
if it's a credit card,
if
yeah.
it's a credit card, the victim is reimbursed back the money. Then the card company or the bank
Mhm.
will then go after.
Well, I guess then I'm not sure what this is, if it's an account with a credit limit or if it's a credit card. But either way, it doesn't have to be
So if you go to
$10,000.
the Staples store, you have to have the card?
Yeah, well, I don't know, I've used the card.
No.
Karen used the card.
The card can't be signed.
Well, I think we should, on those particular three, I
Just
think we should
reduce
reduce
them.
them. But it doesn't need to be $10,000.
At this point, just reduce them, then it looks like there's a need, but always increase them later, it's not a major issue.
Well, the same thing with the Home Depot one, why does it have to be $5,000?
Probably doesn't.
So can we reduce that one as well? Sorry.
Yeah, we can ask to have those reduced.
Okay. And the asterisk you have at the bottom, how are we dealing with that?
Yes.
I spoke with the department heads about that
Okay.
and implored them
Forward,
to please bring all of the receipts. And as a matter of
Bring your
fact,
receipts.
as a matter of fact, this policy gives them 2 business days, whereas before it was theoretically open-ended.
Okay.
And to not lose the receipts, that's the other thing. It causes some difficulty.
Bring a motion on this?
I'll bring it back for
Okay.
a final, and we can, have more information on the credit limits and actual cards.
So we can put it up fiscal.
Yeah. The business card resolution form, you didn't want to see 3 users on it, you wanted to see 2, so we changed that.
Yes.
And again, this is just to administer the account going, and as we said, what prompted this was we wanted to take Roger Rice's name off the card and Ken
Yes.
Card and Mr. Vannigan's name. So that's what prompted this. But nobody had any questions or anything, just move forward with that. Merit policy, you may recall that we've talked about this a couple of times, and I did meet also with the department heads to discuss it. At this time, I guess what I'd like to do is take the concept, the discussion about the merit policy and bifurcate it. So we had the merit policy that had been proposed, and it had a numerical scoring system attached to it, whereby if an employee got X score, that equated into a percentage merit raise. And the board, at the end of the day, wasn't entirely comfortable with that concept. So set that aside, just set that over there. But what I would like to talk to the board about is still trying to get the timing to line up with the budget season. Right now, the way we're doing it is where there's the merit pool, and the merit pool does not get distributed until after the voting, so maybe April, May, June. And what that means is that for the entire fiscal year, we are working working with a budget that doesn't match the budget that went to the deliberative session and that the voters vote on. And it definitely creates confusion and some complications. I mean, what gets reported to DRA is what was voted on, what the auditor works with is what's voted on. So again, if we could get evaluations done, even if we wanted to push it to December and call it an annual review, so in other words, you do the review at the end of the calendar year, if the board received those and then made decisions in January for the final budget, so that if any pay increases were going to be awarded, it would then be distributed, and so in other words, the final budget would include the actual pay, that would be good.
And what was the department head's response to this?
They agree, because they agree that it's confusing, that the budget that they submit and then the budget that they end up working with isn't the same, and it creates agita.
It's the way it should be. I think
I think Yiddish word
What's
too.
that word?
Agita.
That was good, so I think it's a good idea. I think that what it tends to do.
Okay, so we'll bring that back,
Yes.
make it in a final form. Do you have any thoughts on whether the only concern I have about waiting until December to do evaluations is that that's just really crunch time. But if you feel that it's not gonna take a lot of time to review what the department heads are proposing and then make a decision in the 3 weeks in January, then we can leave it that way.
I'm comfortable with the September 30th.
Yeah.
With September?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's sometimes stragglers or reasons to delay, so then you're into October.
Yeah.
And then you want to have a conversation with each of the department heads, so that takes some time.
Mhm.
So then you're into November-ish. So,
Okay.
ish, November-ish.
All right. that's
All right, thank you. Town hall door, I'm not sure whether the board is aware of this. We have constant problems with the door at town hall. Problems with the door, problem with the latch set, problem with the crash bar, problem locking the door. So that sometimes it is actually not possible to lock the door when we leave at night, and then we have to do all kinds of other things in order to attempt to secure the building.
This is temperature related stuff. You can't close the door.
It's not a commercial door,
It's not a
and so it's an older residential door that's being asked
door.
to serve a commercial purpose.
1766 door.
Yeah.
There you go.
And obviously, I know that we're talking about what to do with the buildings, but not being able to lock, or in some cases, unlock the door is a problem.
Which
So
door is this one?
it's the one everybody uses.
Okay, the one that's in the.
I call it the front door, and everybody has to correct me because it's not the front door.
Okay.
Tax
I was thinking of the other door.
See, that's why I asked the
It's the
question.
door that everyone uses.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the door, the back door.
Yeah,
back
the
door.
door that's next to the hobo shed.
Yes.
Just when I figured out how to lock and unlock it easily, you're now going to switch it on me.
Well, we had to have the locksmith there not too long ago, and he kind of played with it a little, but,
I figured the trick in terms of how to get it to do it, so.
yeah. Well, hopefully, if we can get this done, nobody needs to know what the trick is to lock and unlock the
What do we need to
door.
get done? Just have somebody come out and look at it?
No, we can hold the door.
We're gonna replace it.
New door, new crash bar, new lock set, latch set.
It's also for safety purposes.
I mean, huh?
And this money's come out of the building capital reserve fund?
Correct.
Okay. Love it. No, I saw it. I think we should move forward.
Yes.
Yeah, I move to grant the town administrator permission to enter into a contract with All Door and Lock to purchase and install a new commercial town hall door and hardware at a cost not to exceed $1,920 and funds to come out of the town building capital reserve fund.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? No, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to bring to your attention information that we received from University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension relative to the Emerald Ash Borer. Conservation Commission just wanted me to make sure that the board was aware of this, and we put some information in the e-crier. So this is really just information at this point, unless you have any specific questions.
And it's, oh, sorry. Oh, it's my understanding that the campgrounds already got this information, right?
What's the question again?
The information about the ash borer, the campgrounds have already got this information so they can let their patrons know
Yeah,
that.
I don't know the particulars, but I'm sure they do. For years, it has been illegal to bring
Okay.
wood to a
Firewood,
campsite.
yeah.
It's confiscated if you bring wood.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, the MS 535, which I received from the auditor at about 5:30 this evening. A copy in front of you. At this time, I'd like to get the board's signature on it. Again, this is something that has to go to DRA so that we can continue to move forward with the tax rate setting.
So our unassigned fund balance is $2.4 million.
Yes.
2.461022.
Yes.
Yes.
Although, just be advised, this is not the final audit.
This is where it is at the moment.
This is
At the
where,
moment.
this is where it is, yes.
Any problems? That's good.
So is this the last thing other than the utilities information from the MS1? So we can set the tax rate, or is there anything else?
So far as I know, that's it. 535, the MS1. They have the estimated revenues. I believe that the town clerk tax collector has submitted all of her reports. I know that the trustees of trust have. And then one final item, I neglected to put it on the agenda, just an update on the Governor's Office Commission on Disability. They did respond back to me, but at this time, they're very busy. And they felt that they didn't have time to walk through all our buildings and assist us, but then they did send us a 90-page, very detailed checklist and suggested that the building inspector would do that. So I sent that to Ms. Rossi and Mr. Booth, and they said yes, they would assist, so they're gonna start working with Mr. Stevens on working through the checklist to determine what, if anything, we need to do for the buildings at Town Center relative to the ADA.
Bill Stevens, right?
Bill Stevens and Bill Booth.
Yes.
So once we have that information completed, we get that back to the governor's office and we go from there. That's it.
Sounds good. Next item on the agenda is motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
They get confused if we hear this.
Please do not envy too much at once.
That stuff comes back without signature.
better to do?
Well, I just wanted to see if there was other issues that you might have questions on.
Oh,
I think you need to go into non-public just to solve these before we approve them.
Yeah, we already put it.
Okay.
I don't see it.
Then we're all set? Okay.
Oh, can I request that we do it for,
Sure. Is it for personnel reasons?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, that's taken care of.
Okay, let's take it and hand those back to me. Here we go. All right, well, there you go.
Just change a couple.
whose is that?
Sorry.
Whoa, my God, what was that?
She hit the microphone.
You want to go to a, very
Sure.
a motion, I move to go to a non-public session per New Hampshire RSA 91-A:311
Second.
11A.
Second.
We have a second, motion's on the floor, all in favor? Aye.
Roll call.
Mr. Bugden?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. LaCourse? Yes. Nothing, Steve.
Oh, can we do some of that in this room?
I'm sorry, I meant to look at that before I,
It's 75, but when we were in here before, it was 81, so.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna kill us all here. So, I wanted to get back to the discussion that we had about the, I don't want to call it facilities committee, we have to give it another name at this point.
FC2.
SC2.
And
You're from the government, aren't you?
what's gonna happen, wait for Julie, for you to find out what you gotta find out. I thought maybe Scott could stop writing something, but pass it to you, so it doesn't come to us, so I don't want any aspect of
Yeah.
anything going on there. Then somehow you can disseminate it to us. And it's gonna be, 3 pieces will be in there, 1 will be the charge itself, 2 will be the membership, I guess.
Well, she's proposing those names, so the proposed.
Yeah, proposed member, well,
Yeah,
and the thoughts at this time would be a maximum of 10 people represented the Board of Selectmen, and not the town administrator. We'll use her differently at this point. Maybe we'll stick,
Dawn.
we'll stick with it.
they probably need somebody to take minutes.
Yeah.
Ooh.
We could have.
I'm sure we'll have
And it'd probably be in 2 phases that we tell one part of it would be the committee would be talking about selling the vision in the first part. And hopefully getting to the point of where we can put on the warrant the vision as well as engineering, ask for engineering drawings, but the committee will stay intact if the money is awarded to work with it, they have worked with, so. So in the long run, and somehow before the deliberative session, we have to come up with how much money we would request for the engineering plans or whatever it is at this point to make it real.
Well, I think there's different types of plans, because the plans that we're looking for is just the schematics.
Yeah.
And in terms of elevations.
The cell
Don't
of
need-
thought.
We don't need all the subsystems.
That's correct.
So we don't need to know how, where all the electrical outlets are, and where all the heat
We don't need
ducts and
that,
all
that comes afterwards.
So we're looking at the first level of drawings.
So that's where it sits at this point. All right, anything else popping up?
I will, if it's amenable to you two gentlemen, I will unofficially, discreetly ask my contact at the church where they are in terms of the process. Not officially,
Absolutely.
and just see where they are. Maybe their assessment came in $10,000 less than what we offered, and they're game to move forward, but at least that'll give us an idea.
I think, well, I think maybe Scott, you said it, that I want the land for the town independent, even if this town hall issue fails, I still want to buy the land. So I think when these opportunities come up for expansion, we should take advantage.
So then we should buy the Bannister property.
I wanted to at one time. And we had a special meeting and it got defeated. But I wanted to buy it and put a gazebo on it so we'd use it for the future.
Well, it's for sale. It's for sale again.
Yeah, but then I'd have to rip it down again, so it's not gonna work out.
Because you don't like the building either.
No, I don't. I don't like the building.
Do we know how much it's for sale for? Do we? No?
All right, I don't see anything else. Is anything else, Mr. Buckby?
We have a presentation on November 1st for the General John Sullivan will be here.
General John Sullivan.
The owner of the Sullivan House in Durham will be here giving a presentation downstairs. That would be really cool.
Presentation on what?
General Sullivan, his life in the house.
Life and Times.
So it's a pretty good presentation. I've seen it before. And the General Sullivan House is for sale. If you've got a couple $1 million, you can buy it.
It's a big time house, yeah. A lot of historical property there.
Yeah. So that's coming. We had, this last week I sent pictures to Denise about the war correspondence during World War II. That was cool. That was a good time. Plus you missed all the war cake.
You don't want the war cake.
Yes, we had
No
two versions of war cake. I brought my leftovers home and my son says, "What's this?" And I said, "This cake they made during the war." I said, "Try it." I haven't got any pieces. He's eaten it all. So he enjoyed it. So.
Anything, Mr. Brown?
No?
Good. Town Minister? Denise? Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.